What's up and welcome to my review of the Zephyrus G15. This laptop offers a great bang for the buck in an overall thin and light and very premium feeling package. So what do you get under the hood when you buy the Zephyrus G15? Well, first of all, for the processor, we get a Ryzen 9 5900HS. This is an 8-core, 16-thread CPU. When under a dual load, we get 47 watts of power, and when under a CPU-only load, we get 61 watts of power. This is very good performance, especially in such a thin and light laptop. For the RTX 3070, we have a Max Q variant with 79.5 watts of power under a dual load and 99 watts of power when under a GPU-only load. Now, this TDP for this GPU is okay, but it's not as high as you'll get in a thicker chassis. So know that you are sacrificing some performance when you get this laptop. How much? Let's take a quick look comparing the SCAR 15 versus this Zephyrus G15. Now the SCAR 15 has an RTX 3080, 130 watt. We averaged 147 FPS in the mostly CPU bound games versus the 126 FPS of the Zephyrus G15. And then in the GPU bound games, we averaged 60 FPS in the SCAR 15 versus the 51 FPS in the GPU bound games for the Zephyrus G15. So that means we don't have a massive performance gap, even though there is a big gap in price between these two machines. And to top it off, the Zephyrus G15 is thinner and lighter with lower TDP components. Overall, there is a noticeable improvement in performance when you go with an RTX 3080 130 watt, but it's not massive. And I think that's the main takeaway here. If you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of performance and save some money at the same time, you can still get great performance with this $1,799 Zephyrus G15. Now this machine comes with a 2560 by 1440, 165 Hz, 318 nits, 100% sRGB, 93% Adobe RGB, and 91% of the P3 color gamut as measured by my Spider 5 Elite. Now overall gaming on the 165 Hz QHD display was excellent, and I think creators will also really appreciate the high color gamut of the display. This display has no ghosting or response rate issues, and it does also have FreeSync on it. So if you're playing between 48 frames per second and 165 frames per second, you will see no ghosting or tearing on the display whatsoever. It's just simply a gorgeous, awesome display to game on or to create projects with. I believe it's the exact same display on the SCAR 15 that I use for my personal laptop, and I absolutely love it. And you can also play games well at 1080p resolution if you choose to down res, but it will depend on the game you play because in some games it is more noticeable than others. Now this thing comes with 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 MHz dual channel RAM, but one of the sticks is soldered to the motherboard. So if you're wanting to have dual channel memory, you're stuck at 16 gigs of RAM. So if you already know you're going to need more than 16 gigs, go for the 32 gig version of this laptop instead, or buy a laptop where you can upgrade both of the sticks of RAM so you have dual channel memory. Now this has 1 terabyte of PCIe SSD storage, and it's very, very fast. You also have an open PCIe M.2 slot for easy upgradability if you want to add more storage. Now this comes with Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.1, and it weighed 4.33 pounds according to my scale, which I think is insanely light considering the incredible specs you're getting with this machine. I really like the classy, slim design that the Zephyrus G15 has. It doesn't scream gaming laptop, which is going to be great for people that need to take this laptop into school or business environments. Now the massive glass touchpad worked exceptionally well, and I did not have a problem accidentally touching it. The keyboard was solid with good backlight, and it is a single zone RGB backlight, but I actually prefer just keeping it on the white backlight because it just looks great with the gray color scheme. And here's what the keyboard sounds like when you type on it. Now this laptop comes with 6 2-watt speakers. That's right, 6 speakers in this laptop, and the audio is very loud, and it comes through with solid mids and highs and good overall bass, but it's not the best sounding laptop, but it is still quite loud. Now when I first got this laptop, I did have audio popping issues, which might affect you as well if you buy it, but the good news is I did message ASUS, and they said that it's just a software fix. The equalizer is off out of the box, and all I had to do was go in there and click balanced, and boom, the audio problems were entirely solved. Like the audio went from being like utter crap to being amazing and one of the best audio experiences I've had on a recent gaming laptop. Now the battery life on this machine is excellent. In airplane mode with power savings, you're looking at about 10 hours of use, while browsing the web or watching videos, probably about 7 to 8 hours of use. And of course, while gaming, you're gonna kill that battery life super quickly. Now this does have a fingerprint reader on the power button. And the nice thing about this is when you press that power button to turn the laptop on, it'll cache your fingerprint and automatically log you in when you get to the Windows login screen. Now starting on the right side, we have one USB-A and a micro SD card slot. Then we have a fan exhaust and a Kensington lock port. On the back, we have two more fan exhausts, and then on the left side, we have another fan exhaust, the power adapter port, HDMI 2.0B, Ethernet port, USB-A, two USB-Cs that double as USB-C power delivery and display port out, and then a headphone mic combo port. Now, something that's very important to keep in mind for the ports on this laptop is that if you want to game on an external display, you'll want to use the USB-C out ports for this because it is hooked directly to the NVIDIA GPU. Now, the nice thing about the HDMI port, which is hooked up to the integrated GPU, is that you can use that port to output video well on battery life. Say if you're doing a business presentation, you won't need to drain the battery life very quickly. Now with Timespy, I got 9498, which is excellent for a laptop that is this thin and light. If you compare this with the GS66 Stealth, which is also a 15-inch thin and light laptop from last year, you can see that we got 7,418. Now that's overall a 28% performance gain in terms of pure GPU performance. Now when it comes to Timespy points per pound, we got 2,193. This is a truly excellent high performance package to take with you on the go. If you're someone that needs to have a high performance gaming laptop that you just want to have as thin and as light as possible, this is one of the lightest 15-inch gaming laptops out there that still packs a solid punch. And when it comes to points per dollar, this laptop is still near the very top of the chart, which is excellent. Now for CPU performance in Cinebench R23, we got 12,117, and it topped the charts on my single core performance of 1,478. For Cinebench R20, we got 4653, which is not the very best. We're a little bit behind the other ASUS laptops I've tested with the Ryzen 9 5900HX, and this is simply because of the TDP difference and the thinner chassis, but this is still an excellent result, especially for a laptop that is, again, so thin and light. And as you can see, this is nearly at the top of my Cinebench R20 points per pound, and it still performs quite well on a points per dollar basis. So not only is this laptop thin and light, but it offers great CPU performance as well as GPU performance all around. But how well does this translate into actual gameplay? Now I ran 15 game benchmarks in 1080p and 1440p, and you can see that we're getting excellent playable frame rates in nearly every game on high and ultra settings, even with RTX and DLSS enabled. Now keep in mind that in some of these titles, you might want to turn the graphics down a little bit to boost the frame rate. Overall, I was very impressed with the Zephyrus G15's gaming performance. I think the vast majority of people would be super happy to carry this in the backpack, pull it out, and play games anywhere they go. This thing can maximize the 165 Hz refresh rate in the vast majority of esports titles at 1440p resolution, which is the ideal situation that you want for an esports gaming laptop. Now keep in mind this is not always the case. For example, in Call of Duty Warzone and QHD, we only got 95 FPS, which may not be enough for some of you out there. Now, one of the biggest questions for the Zephyrus G15 is how well does this laptop stack up to the competition? Like, is this going to perform better than the other laptops on the market? Well, let's take a look. In Cyberpunk 2077, we averaged 50 FPS, which beats out the GS66 Stealth, the Area 51M with the RTX 2080, and the Razer Blade Pro 17 with the RTX 2080 Super Max Q. And then when we take a look at Red Dead Redemption 2, we got 73 FPS. And when we take a look at the GS66 Stealth's RTX 2070 Max Q performance from last year, you can see we only had 46 FPS. So we're getting big gains in these GPU-bound games. But when we look at CPU-bound game performance, like in Far Cry 5 and in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, you can see that we're just in the middle of the pack, or even being beat in some cases by last generation hardware. Why is this? because these games are CPU bound. We also don't have a mux switch in this laptop to help boost performance in these CPU bound games, and to top it off, we don't have the fastest memory in this laptop. So does this mean that you shouldn't buy the Zephyrus G15? Well, for some people, maybe not. For example, if all you do is play Call of Duty Warzone every day, it's hard for me to recommend this system because you're just going to see lower frames per second than you would if you got a system with a mux in it. But for the vast majority of gamers out there, I think you're going to see great frame rates. You're going to be super happy with this laptop. You're going to be able to play AAA games with very smooth frame rates on ultra settings, and then you're going to be able to play those esports titles and max out the 165 Hz refresh rate, which is the target refresh rate for this laptop. And that translates to me as excellent overall gaming performance. Now, I do not recommend the Zephyrus G15 for everyone out there. If you want to get the most possible performance per dollar and you don't mind carrying a thicker machine, then I highly recommend getting a machine that has a mux switch and higher overall TDP to provide additional GPU bound performance. A mux switch would increase your CPU bound performance, and the higher TDP would increase your GPU bound performance, providing an overall increased performance and slightly smoother gameplay. But for the vast majority of people out there, I still think you're going to be very happy with the Zephyrus G15's performance, particularly at the price point that it's at and all of the additional features that this machine comes with that typically cost quite a bit more. Now, this laptop offers a nice blend of fan noise versus performance depending on which fan profile you select. You have silent, performance, turbo, and manual. And manual also allows you to increase or decrease the power limits applied to the CPU. Now, in silent mode, I only saw 42.5 decibels of fan noise. This is only 2 decibels above the ambient room noise, so that means that it is almost completely silent, even when under a dual load stress test. So that's 2 giant thumbs up, and will allow you to do a fair bit of gaming with the laptop being completely silent if you wish to do so. Now, performance and turbo offer a nice blend of fan noise and GPU and CPU performance, and manual mode obviously allows you to crank the fans up to 100%, providing slightly higher CPU thermal limits, at the same time increasing the fan noise to 56.7 decibels. So if you want a nice blend of CPU and GPU performance with minimal fan noise, I would recommend probably the performance or turbo fan profiles, but if you want the best thermals, I do recommend the manual fan profile. Now, one downside of using the performance or turbo mode is that the fans don't move enough air to keep the keyboard and underside of the chassis cool to the touch. So for example, if you're going to game with the laptop on your lap, I do recommend the manual fan mode or the silent fan mode. Overall, the Zephyrus G15 is far from a perfect laptop, but I think it provides great bang for the buck, a nice blend of thin profile, solid CPU and GPU performance with great GPU bound game performance and middling level CPU bound game performance. So if you primarily play CPU bound games, you may want to skip this laptop, but for the vast majority of gamers out there, I think you'll be extremely happy. We've got a great display, great speakers, good keyboard, great trackpad, great overall thermals and temperatures with no thermal throttling, and it's only a $17.99 price point. This is arguably one of the most attractive laptops of 2021 so far, and I can highly recommend it for the vast majority of people out there. If there was one group of people out there that I would not recommend the Zephyrus G15 for, it's the performance per dollar seekers. If you really want to get the maximum performance for each dollar spent, the G15 just doesn't offer as much performance as a higher TDP laptop or a laptop that has a mux switch. But I simply love all of the premium features and the high quality overall laptop experience that the Zephyrus G15 provides, which I think is just a lot better than most laptops around this price point. Now, if you want to compare the Zephyrus G15 versus the other laptops available around the $1,800 price point, I did create a spreadsheet comparing all of the RTX 3000 series laptops that are currently available. So I've included a link to that comparison spreadsheet in the video description down below. Anyway, that's it for my review of the Zephyrus G15. Now I will be doing a detailed performance analysis between this laptop, my Scar 15, which I have right here, and then the Strix G17 that I also reviewed recently. So if you don't want to miss out on that, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you found this review helpful, smash that like button. I will see you in the next one. Brandon out. Huzzah.
my teeth. Then kiss, 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 kiss. Her